Welcome to the Explainer. Have you ever wished you could just write a blog post in some simple, clean text and have it, I don't know, magically show up as a perfect web page? Well, today, we're diving into exactly that. How to turn plain old Markdown into full-blown websites using the power of Python. Let's get right into it.
You know, this right here, this quote from a developer on Reddit, it just nails it. It perfectly captures the dream, doesn't it? The whole point is to focus on your ideas, your content, not spend hours wrestling with code. And that exact problem is what we're going to solve today.
So, let's start with that dream. Why do developers and writers love Markdown so much? Well, really, it all comes down to just one thing: simplicity.
And here's what we're talking about, side by side. On the left, you've got Markdown. It's clean, it's intuitive. Honestly, it looks kind of like a nicely formatted email. But on the right, that's what the browser actually needs to see, HTML. It's powerful, for sure, but it's also really wordy, full of all these tags. The real magic trick is bridging that gap without you having to do it by hand. And this is where our magic wand comes into play. To make that jump from simple text to a web page, the Python world gives us some seriously powerful tools. At the heart of all this is something called a Markdown parser. The best way to think of it is as a translator. It reads one language, your simple Markdown, and spits it out in another language that web browsers can actually understand, which is HTML. It is the engine that makes this whole thing go.
For our explainer today, we're going to zoom in on one really popular parser called Python Markdown2. It's a great case study because it's widely used, and its goal, right in the documentation, is to be a fast and complete Python implementation of Markdown. We'll see how that holds up.
And what's cool is that it does way more than just the basics. The library has these things it calls extras. Think of them like optional power-ups you can turn on to handle stuff like code blocks with syntax highlighting, or tables, or footnotes, all the things you'd need for, say, a technical blog. It gives you a ton of flexibility.
Okay, so you've picked your parser. Great. But now you hit a fork in the road. You have to decide how you're actually going to build your website. And there are two main paths you can go down.
So path number one is the dynamic path. You see this a lot with big web frameworks like Django. Here's the play-by-play. A visitor comes to your site and requests a page. The server then grabs the raw Markdown text from a database, runs it through the parser right then and there, and sends that freshly baked HTML to the user's browser. It all happens on the fly for every single visit. Now, the second option is the static path. This is completely different. Here, you, the developer, run a script ahead of time before anyone even visits your website. That script goes through all your Markdown files, converts them to HTML, and saves them as complete, ready-to-go files. Your entire site is just sitting there, pre-built and waiting. So, we have our parser, we've picked a path. Seems simple enough, right? Well, not so fast. It turns out the world of Python Markdown parsers is a lot more crowded and honestly a lot more complicated than you might think. I mean, just look at a few of the options. That type column there reveals a really important trade-off. You've got libraries like Mistune, which are written in a lower-level language like C. That promises blazing speed. And then you have pure Python ones, like our Markdown2 example, which are often way easier to install and get working everywhere. And this is where it gets really juicy. Remember how Python Markdown2 called itself fast? Well, here's a direct quote from a well-known blog post that actually benchmarked these libraries. The author was, let's say, not impressed. This creates a really interesting contradiction. And here is the data behind that claim. In this one specific test, Mistune, the C-based library, is just ridiculously fast, less than a second. But then look at the pure Python options. The original Markdown library clocked in at 46 seconds, and Markdown2, it took over 78 seconds. In this test, it was actually the slowest of the bunch. And yet, if you go to the official project page for Markdown2, this is what you see. The claim is right there, front and center. A fast and complete implementation. So who's right, the benchmark or the library's own author? The truth is, it's complicated. If you peek behind the curtain and look at the project's GitHub issues, you see the reality of any open source tool. It's a living thing. There are performance bugs, feature requests, technical debt. Speed isn't the only thing that matters, and every single tool has its own set of trade-offs. Which brings us to probably the most important part of this whole explainer. This isn't about finding the one best tool. It's about finding the right tool for whatever it is you're trying to do. So let's circle all the way back to those two paths. Dynamic rendering is fantastic for sites where content is constantly changing. Maybe there's a lot of user interaction. But static generation? That's typically faster, more secure, and cheaper to host. It's perfect for things like blogs and documentation.
You know, exactly what that Reddit user was dreaming of.
So here's the bottom line. Context is king. Does that raw benchmark speed really matter if you only build your site once a day when you publish a new post? Probably not. Is having a rich set of features, those extras, more important than raw speed? For a lot of projects, yeah, absolutely. The best tool is simply the one that fits your goals.
And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. As we find more and more powerful ways to mix simple text with really complex code, from AI writing content to fully interactive documents, that line between writing and programming, it just keeps getting blurrier. It really makes you wonder, what's the next generation of these magical tools going to look like?